I am so glad that you don't see any of the behind the scenes with regards to this at times, and that's because I've been racking my brains trying to find the sequences for two times where I've used this transition professionally, and I don't have one of them, but I have the render, but I do have the other one. So this is my this is up there in my top 5, maybe even top 3 transitions. Let me just turn this down. Let me show you what this transition is. And what I want to say here is this transition it works a little bit like a stage manager, a good stage manager in a theater. If a good stage manager is doing their job correctly, you don't notice them because everything runs as expected and you never ever see them. You don't know the existence of them. I used to work in entertainment, and it was the biggest bugbear of all stage managers, the fact that if they did the job right, you didn't know they existed. It's kind of the same with this transition. This transition also has been used in a lot of TV and Hollywood. If you're familiar with the Sherlock series, it's used a lot in that as well. And when it's done correctly with the right footage, it's breathtaking. And the viewer doesn't notice it at first and thinks, oh, what happened there? And it's usually used to drive the story. In the example that the footage I'm going to be using, it doesn't really drive the story, but it kind of really highlights it. But the two ways that I've used it in this professional work, it does drive the story. So this is the first one that I've selected. I've just turned down the audio a little bit. Let me just check if it's quiet enough. Yeah, that's okay. So this is a company called Forshaw and Sons. Their facilities management. What they do, or this guy does, Mac, is he provides a service where he installs handrails for those who have disabilities or infirm, and the brief was to kind of show a day in the life. So we did a kind of a Postman Pat feel, in as much as we just saw him rock up in his van. He's gone to the place that makes these. You see these transitions? Those are the zoom out and the pan left transition from Premiere Pro. And yeah, we did a kind of Postman Pat thing where we followed him along. And it's in this location where this transition takes place. So this is the powder coating going on. And once this powder coating is on the steel rail, it then goes into here, which is a big oven. And let's see if you notice the transition first. So there he is, he's putting on the powder coating, and then we're into the oven. Did you notice it? Did you see the transition? Now obviously a lot of these clips are just cut. I mean, that's a zoom transition, but then we cut and just simple cut and cut, and a cut can be used very effectively, and cut is still the number one transition. It's just easy, it doesn't overcomplicate things. But I wanted to drive the narrative here, and I wanted to kind of speed it up, but not in a kind of, oh, I've missed something. So here we've got your man powder coating. And then what I do is I've taken the opposite corner to this. If we go back out, we saw that it's a square. It's a square thing to hold everything. And it's on casters, it's on wheels. So what I did is when I was filming this, it was all on a gimbal, I took this corner here, not in this shot, but in the next shot. I filmed close enough to make sure that the opposite corner to this, which is this corner, filled the whole frame. And this is the big thing about this transition. You need something that fills the whole frame and that goes across it, either horizontally or vertically. And the way it works, if we watch here, this doesn't make sense. That's not what should be the other side of this pole. It should be the continuation of this frame. But as we step through, it reveals the same frame on wheels, but moving. But do you know what I mean? It kind of tricks the eye. It's a little bit trippy, but when it's done right, it drives it. And it's also sometimes known as the seamless transition. I like it. I like to call it the masking transition because it's kind of what it does. You mask out. Let me show you another example of this, and that's in Scott Comanche, Hippie Mandy. You saw Forrest Gump Funk a while back. Let me just check the audio. Yeah. So you saw Forrest Gump Funk. Remember where he was dressed as he was up on the horse as a Comanche Indian. Well, this is remember this guy's got a Comanche heritage and he's really knuckling down on it because he's so proud of it. And this is a song about a lady called Hippie Mandy, and she. Oh, by the way, that overlay right there, that was from Motion Array as well. Just dragged up. We'll talk about that later in a future section. It'll be under video overlays. Anyway, so this was the story where we brought this lady called Hippie Mandy, and she was just a happy person. Oh, by the way, do you see the letterbox coming in? We've done that before. And she absolutely loved life. But she suffered a lot from mental health, and sadly her life took a downward toll. She was a very good friend of Scott's, and he wanted to write a song about her. If you're interested and you'd like to see this, search for Hippie Mandy Scott Comanche. It's actually 1M and it's IE. Isn't it funny how the renders are never really what you've set up when you've set up a sequence? But it's Hippie Mandy, HIPPIE Mandy, and he's Scott Comanche with 1M because that's how it's supposed to be spelled. But yeah, we tell this story, and where I've used the transition is where she starts the downward spiral of her life. And it's just coming up right here. So we've labeled this drug deal because this is what she does. She turns to narcotics, and her life really does take a real downward spiral. So we have this clip here where we establish, and this is the car coming in, and Mandy's right there. And then she does the drug deal, and then he drives away, and then we're in the house. Did you see the transition? If I slowly go down this. By the way, we will be touching on this. If you've got a mouse with a scroll wheel, and rather than down here, where up and down gets you up and down the timeline, this brings you one click frame by frame through a video. It's brilliant. It's something I've only actually worked out in recent months, and it really helps you scrub finally. But if you look here, as we come through, the car goes past, and then we're in her house. Well, thankfully, this isn't the render. This is actually the actual sequence. So I've copied those out, and I've put them in here. I can show you exactly what's happening. Let me just play that back through. So we've got that, and then he drives off. He was actually a lovely bloke. And we're now in with the dog. Well, if we go back to this clip, if we look over in the effects controls, something's happening here, and it's to do with a mask in opacity. Discuss that a little bit in more detail. But first and foremost, let's just have a look what's happening with this mask. If I highlight the mask, we can now see the mask. If I go to 50%, that's not enough, 25%, yeah. So as you can see, there's our mask. And if I scroll down on the mouse wheel, you can see that the playhead is getting close to these keyframes. And if I get to the first keyframe, you can see that the car is fully covering the frame. However, as I step down with my mouse and click down, this mask is now traveling along and it's cutting out the car. And below it is this clip. If I disable this clip for now, you can see that it's cutting out that video. So all the way along that car, the edge of the car works as a wipe. And if I bring this back in, let me just highlight the mask again. You can see it all working. It doesn't have to be pretty mask. I mean, look, at this point, I think I just, yeah, that'll be fine. I'll get rid of that point on the next, or I'll move it out and all around in it. Yeah, it doesn't have to be pretty. It just has to mask. It just has to mark the part that we're trying to get rid of. You fancy learning how to do this? Right, let's go. So I've taken the liberty of going to Motion Array and grabbing a couple of clips down. First and foremost, we have a New York City subway platform. Let me just go to fit so we can see it properly. And what I wanted to do is, rather than tell the story in this, because obviously I've only got one clip, I wanted to really highlight or maybe kind of give a feeling of where someone would rather be rather than on the subway. This isn't a slight on the New York City subway. I think they're all the same, as delightful as ever. So we're going from the subway to a lovely field of wheat. Good? You follow me on this? Okay. So what do we do first? Well, this is the clip that we want to mask out of. So we're going to put this on the second video track. This is going to come under here, but not for now. We don't need to do that just yet. So what am I looking for, and why have I selected this piece of footage to use for this section? Well, you can kind of see right here, that's the back of someone, and that someone has walked right across. There's another guy there, but he's walked right across the scene. I'm pretty sure whoever's created this has thought, yeah, that's exactly what it would be used for. Okay, so how do we do this? Well, first and foremost, we have this first person walking past, and we could use that guy, but I'm going to use this one because it's almost like a fake. You know, in like sport, you see someone walk past, oh, you can see, oh no. Maybe you're watching this and you think you expected that to happen because this is such a well-used effect. I don't think it's overused. And I think that's because of the amount of work that goes into achieving this effect. It is easy once you get your head around it, but it is also, or can be, quite time consuming depending on what you're masking at. So let's get this guy, and that's the guy that we're going to use to mask across. Okay. So let's get to the point where he comes in, but we don't want his front. We're not masking from his front. We're masking from his back. If we mask from his front, all of a sudden this would just wipe across and we wouldn't know there was a person there wiping across. Does that make sense? Good. So let's use them. I'm just on here now, and I'm just going right and left on my keyboard on the cursor to decide where to start the mask. And I'm looking right up here because when it's people, if I get him a little bit further on, as you can see, if we're looking to draw a vertical line down, the earliest point in which this happens is right here at the nape of his neck, because that's the furthermost left, the furthermost forward that we're going to need to mask out. So if we go back, we need to get from where he comes in. However, he's also got some up and down movement, which we're going to have to bear in mind, and will probably make it a little bit more difficult or a little bit more time consuming to mask. You can be as accurate or as inaccurate as you want to be with this. So I'm going to show you the basics, and I'm not going to finesse it too much, but I'll give you the tools to be able to finesse it. You don't be sitting here for hours while I do this. So how do we do this? Well, first and foremost, we need to engage this clip. And what we want to do is we want to start off a masking transition. So I need to click the pen tool. The minute I click the pen tool, you'll see this kind of had a little bit of a moment. It's back to where it was. And we've now opened a mask. We've started a mask. Although we've not done anything, we now have all the dialogue for the mask. And I cannot stress this enough. Now listen to me. The most important thing you need to do is toggle on the keyframing, because if you don't toggle on this keyframing here with mask path, you start drawing your path, you move along, which is what we'll do. We'll move the mask along and all that. If you get to here and you're like, yeah, okay, great. And then you look back and you realize that you hadn't toggled this on, none of the information that you will have fed it will have been recorded, and you'll have masked and then moved on and you'll get to the end and you'll play it back and the mask will just be here. It will literally just be here, and you'll have a moment. You may have a little bit of a breakdown, and then you'll realize that you have to do all that work all over again. And normally at that point you think, oh, forget it, I'm not going to do that transition. I'll just put a pan transition in or something, and it loses. So the most important thing is to toggle this on, but I'm not going to toggle it on here. I'm going to go back, scrolling up on the mouse wheel. By the way, if you don't have a mouse, even on a laptop, if you don't have a mouse and you're, if I haven't made this point clear enough yet, you need a mouse. I can't stress this enough. The amount of people that I see that edit and they only have a touchpad and a keyboard. And okay, yeah, that's great for being mobile, but the sizes of mice you can get now, even a tiny small one, just get one, because it helps so much with your workflow. Just take that as a top tip. Anyway, so I'm scrolling up while my cursor is in the window, and I can go back frame by frame. And this is where I want to start my mask. We're going to hit keyframe, but not yet. Not yet. Don't do it yet. You keyframe it. You toggle on the keyframe once you've drawn your initial mask. I was going to say your first mask. It's going to be the same mask all the way through this. It's just the initial mask from which we're going to animate. Now, the thing is, the reason why I'm also saying use your mouse up and down is because using the pen tool for anything in Premiere Pro, it's a little bit clunky. It does apply the same rules as the likes of Photoshop and Illustrator, but it's nowhere near as intuitive. It's really quite frustrating. And you see how we're in fit here. The minute I move my mouse out here, my mouse, the cursor changes. And that's a bit annoying, because what we're going to be doing this, and what you do in most masks, unless you're masking a tiny little bit, is you need to come outside the frame. So to do that, you need to size this down to probably about 50%. It's never really that much. You see how it's changing? So you kind of need to go down to 25% to be able to come out of here while you're drawing a mask. And that's never great. So what you'll have to do is you need to tilde. So mouse inside this window, hit tilde, remember that? And then if you size it down to maybe 75%, it gives us some room to move. And that's why being able to scroll up and down on your mouse is absolutely crucial. So we have our pen selected, and we're going to draw our initial mask. And you see how I can move around here and there's no changing of my pen? That's kind of what we want. So let me draw my initial mask, which is just simple box. So that's a mask with 4 points. When you get to the initial point that you created, you'll get a little circle there. That's just confirming that you're going to close up that mask, and that's now going to be your mask. So what's now being created? Well, as you can see, we have 4 handles, or 4 points that we created, and we have a center point here. Nothing really of note to delineate that. It's no real different to any other points around here, but that's just what has been created. So what do we do from here? Well, first and foremost, we tilde out, and we literally hit the stopwatch on mask path. Boom, done, cracking. Everything we do from this point will be saved as we go through and through our keyframes. I will stop in another second just to confirm something that we've done in the past. But first and foremost, where's my mask gone? Because I know that I'm at 50%, but I still should be able to see a bit of mask. That's because the minute that you toggle it on, for some reason, it hides it. So you just need to select your mask again, and this is what we're working on. And now we've got our mask back. Tilde back here. And what I want to do is I actually want to create another point here and another point here. And that's because if I scroll down, I know that this guy is going to come in here with his head. So if I leave this here, I can bring this point down to here and kind of finesse it with this point. It will all become clear, I promise. But if I tilde out now, I've gone down 1 frame. But if I tilde in here, no keyframe has been changed. There's no keyframe has been created. Now you know that if we hit this, we can create a keyframe. And that's fine, and then we can affect and change the value within this mask. However, remember when we were keyframing before, the minute you change your value on something that has the keyframing toggled on, and it's a space that doesn't currently have a keyframe, if you change the value, move this a little bit, if I tilde it out now and tilde back in here, that keyframe, if I zoom in, has been created. We now have two keyframes, one on that frame, one on that frame. And that's what we're just double checking, because once we're in here, we're not going to be coming out of here until the mask is created fully and animated all the way along. Okay. To also double check that that has actually worked, if we go up one on our mouse wheel, yep, that's where it was, and that's where it is now. Okay. Happy with that? Is that clear? Okay, let's get into the nuts and bolts. I've just gone up to 75%. I still have room to work. So yeah, okay, I'm cracking. So this is the fun bit. And this can be as accurate or as inaccurate as you want, as I've said. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to get this point, and you can see why now I created this bit, because I want to get into the bottom of his hoodie there. See how this handle has been created? This is a curve handle. If I grab this and just drag it, you see how this bit comes down and that bit goes up. That's because it's staying true to itself. There's actually one of these handles over here, but you can't see it because it's all the way along this line. So what happens if I don't want to go all the way up here? Well, this is pen tool 101, and if you went to the Bezier game that I showed you in a previous section, you'll know that if I hold Alt and grab this, first and foremost we get a different little symbol for the mouse cursor, and it's just a little V upside down, and we're only now affecting this handle, whereas if we didn't have Alt held, we'd be affecting, make a liar of me, we'd be I've selected it on its own, haven't I? So if I select this back again, there's our other handle now. And if I don't hold Alt, that's never happened in my life, but that really helps. So if I've selected it with an Alt, so if I grab that now down, great. However works for you in the moment that you're in, Alt will help you just affect one direction of the curve. Okay, good. I'm also, this is another little trick. If you've got a point here that's been created and it doesn't have any handles, if you hold down Alt and click the point, it creates curves, and then you can have fun with it. Okay, so now you've got a little curve up here and a long curve up here. So I'm just going to grab this point and just bring it down. And this whole process is just making you familiarize yourself with the pen tool. Now that's been created, just tilde out there. I promise I won't do this every time, but now we've got two keyframes, and that first keyframe is all of that, and that second keyframe is all of that, and that first keyframe there, if we click back, is that. Okay, so between that those two keyframes, we're going from that to that. Okay, and we know that the keyframes are being created, so the information is being saved. I can't stress this enough. You don't want to get to the end and realize you hadn't toggled on keyframing. So let's go down one more frame, and there he is. He's moving along. So, okay, let's follow him. So we're going along here with this. Maybe I went a little bit too far with that. Maybe come down so I can make it a little bit more accurate. Good. And we've just got the rounding of his shoulder there, and come down here. Now I'm going to keep an eye down here because I can see black there. Now I don't know if that, obviously the top and bottom here is black, so it kind of helps us to eyeball that, but I don't know if that's shadow or his back. I don't think it's his back. So that keyframe has now been created. I did say I promise I won't do that every time, but look, we've now got 3 keyframes. Good. It's the last time I'll confirm that, I promise. So down once with the click, and okay, that black here was just shadow. So we follow along with him here. However, he hasn't really moved that much up or down, and that shape looks the same shape. And because he's walking directly across and not moving up or towards or away from the camera, we can probably just move this whole mask over. And to do that, as you can see, when I'm outside, we're playing with notes and all that kind of stuff. But when I'm inside, I have a hand tool. Now this just automatically goes to hand when we're inside a mask. It's one thing within masking that I like in Premiere Pro. And if we just click and drag, we can move that whole mask. That's cool. You see how I'm masking everything now? And you can kind of see how we're going to work this along. As he moves, we're going to come along with him. But first and foremost, let's get to this one. And if we just move the mask just a little bit there. Yeah, I'm happy with that. And we'll scroll down with the mouse wheel. Maybe, can we cheat and follow him again? It looks like it, yeah. And keep an eye on here because we don't know when we're going to run out of this. It'd be great if you had a really long back, wouldn't it? Scroll down. Okay, we're starting to change shape a little, I think. Yeah, we are. So let's get that married up. But we don't want to cut off his back because that'll make it look really unnatural. Because, of course, someone walking past you and you're going into a field of wheat from a subway in New York is natural. But yeah, I digress. So, okay, that looks about right. But I'm going to, you see how this doesn't really feel, we've got that round there, but this isn't going to work. We could just go down here and drag it up, but I want to be a little bit more accurate. So I'm going to go here and I'm now going to come down here. And if I put my mouse over the cursor over the line, it gives me the option to plus. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to add another point. And if I now drag this out, I'm dragging out from here rather than from here. Okay. So I can kind of just see the tip of his back there. So I'm going to drag this in there. And I can see his shirt coming in here. As I said, you can be as accurate or inaccurate as you want, but I'm going to put another point here. I'm going to put another point here. I'm going to put another point here. Oh, that's a real problem with the masking tool in Premiere Pro. If you click too close to another point, it just puts a rotation on it for some reason. So just undo that and it's fine. I'm just going to maybe try and get down here. Cool, that's happy. These 3 points here, these remind me of, remember when we were in color and we were looking at the curves and we were putting a point here, a point here, and a point here. The reason why I'm doing that in this point is because the same reason that I'm doing this. If I didn't have that point and that point, if I only had that point, I was pulling down, everything would be coming down. Obviously, I'm affecting this right now. But because I had points out the side, it was only the red that I was affecting. Okay? It's the same premise. Let me just undo all that. It's the same premise in this mask. Because I've put a point, let me get that mask back. If it ever deselects, you just come back and just select your mask again. Because I've put a point here, a point here, and a point here, you can just about see them. They're squares. That means I can bring in this and the other points, they work as handles and they hold it out. Okay? We clear on that? Good. This is getting a little bit annoying. I do wish they'd work on this for Premiere Pro. Okay, that's just going to have to do right now. And his back looks a little bit angular there, doesn't it? Let's just see, holding down Alt. It's probably actually about there, isn't it? Okay, good. And we're now going to go down with the scroll wheel. We're also going to be able to feather this mask, and I'll explain that when we get there. Okay, let's move up with him. And we're starting to run into a few problems, not least up here. Okay, I'm going to address this first. I'm actually going to go to 150%. I'm going to come up here and come up here, just so I've got a little bit more room to work with. I wish you could hold down Alt and zoom in like you do on Photoshop, but you can't. So again, we work with what we've got. And I'm going to curve that down a little bit and bring that down a little bit. Happy with that? Oh, I went to scroll down and use the mouse wheel, which I've been telling you to do, and it didn't do what I wanted it to do. Okay, so we're now moving along here. I think I'm getting away from the mic. I'm getting really close to my monitor. Sorry about that. So we're just going to move this down here a little bit. Down here, we could go in there as well, but I mean, you know, it's kind of, oh yeah, we kind of do need to. I'm going to put another point here, I'm going to grab this handle and bring that into there, but then Alt, grab this handle and bring it out of here. So good. Happy? Okay. Let's go to fit and let's move our way along. Now I'm cheating a little bit here because this fold was put in his shirt a while back. If I go up where his fold actually was, however, Control Z and move down. If I come down to here, the fold isn't there anymore. Which I could go back and find where that fold was and kind of bring it out, but I've keyframed all the way along here, and it's my own kind of mistake. But I want to use this as an example of how you can really trip yourself up, because you can assume what the mask is going to be, and because you can't see it. The reason why I want to point this out is because what a lot of people will do is they'd mask that first. Maybe they'd come to about here, mask that in, and then they'd just scroll right towards the end and then mask that in and let Adobe pick up all the movement in the middle and just kind of tweak in between, maybe like, you know, reposition that, reposition here, reposition there, and kind of try and find a happy medium. But the problem with doing with that, when you've got something like such an irregular shape like this, is that it can really, you can spend more time almost firefighting and finding the bits where it doesn't work. So if you do go through it frame by frame, I mean, as I said, that isn't there anymore. So what I'm thinking of doing is, if I come up to here and move this back, I'm personally going to start to slowly relax this this whole crease myself. Rather than going back, I can do it myself. Okay, yeah, that's good. And then I'll move along, bearing in mind that there's being a keyframe being added every time I change a frame, and then I skip a frame and then move along and affect the value. So we can still, it's little things like that that the eye doesn't necessarily see, but if you do follow, I mean, we're kind of straightened out now, so we're kind of cool. So as long as you're kind of staying as close as you can to this, and this shape has now changed now, and we've gone up here a little bit, so paying attention to that kind of thing will really help to sell the effect. As I say, you don't have to be absolutely dead on. The likes of Hollywood, likes of Marvel films would do that. They would go frame by frame and do absolutely every single pixel. But that's kind of why the production of those films takes not only, well, years really, but also takes a full team. Because something like this, an effect like this, obviously be a lot more intricate than this, but an effect like this on a scene like this, you'd have one person working on one section for months at a time to make sure that everything is absolutely as accurate as anything. And the people who check this work in Hollywood will have just almost like razor sharp focus, and they know exactly what they're looking for. Now here, I can see that the whole shape has changed now. So I'm actually going to spend a bit more time. We're on fit still. So I'm going to go to 75% just so I can see what this handle is doing. And I'm going to just finesse this around. And he's actually changing shape a little bit there. So not like a shapeshifter, but now let's come out a bit. So if we drop that in, maybe bring that back a little bit. The thing is, if you don't necessarily notice something, you can a change of a shape because it's behind a mask. If you don't notice it at the time, if you get too far along, you can really trip yourself up. So if you're going to do this effect, I think it's really important to just take the time and don't rush it. Whatever you do, just don't rush it. If you haven't got the time to do this effect, don't do this effect. You know, if you're in a project that is really time sensitive and it doesn't really need this effect, I mean, only you can make that decision, and only you can make that call. But if you think it's an effect that will really highlight and have your client or your audience be like, yeah. Because the thing is, it's the little things like this that really, I don't need this point, by the way, now. So I'm going to hold down Control, and I'm just going to select it. You see how it gives me a minus? Click that, it's now deleted. So I don't need that. So you can add and subtract points all the way along. But it's only you who can make the decision whether this is needed. And if it is, if it's an effect where you think, oh yeah, that's really gonna, it's gonna sell it, because quite often an audience doesn't necessarily know what they're seeing. And I know that sounds stupid, but it's true. Like the amount of effects, the amount of things that I do for clients, and they're really shocked where it's like, you know, well, you said you were going to do this. And I was like, yeah, I'm doing it. Well, how long does it take? And they don't necessarily get that, like an effect like this. I mean, this effect happens over what? 2 seconds, 3 seconds tops. And it can take as long or as short as you need it to. But I mean, this can take hours, this effect, if you're being absolutely meticulous with it. And I know it's probably really tempting at this point to just rush it through and get there. But I promise you, it is worth it in the end. As soon as you get these handles. Oh, Adobe, why don't you sort it out? Oh, that was a little bit off, wasn't it? Let's just bring that down a little bit. Yeah. And as I said, it really is quite meticulous, and you can spend so much time on this. Let's just finish this up. Nice. Don't rush it. This isn't quite right. Let's move this along. Maybe use this handle. Good. Oh, there we go. Got a bit of space there. And the beauty of this is that whenever you change it, it changes in that keyframe. It doesn't affect the keyframe before. So as I saw, there's a bit of movement here. Grab that handle. Yeah, just undo that Alt and bring that in. And I can go back to the previous one and just check. There's a little bit of bleeding through there. Again, as I said before, we are going to feather this. And if you don't really know what I mean by feather, don't worry, I will explain that. We are going to feather this a little bit. So you can kind of err on the side of caution, go a little bit into him, into what you're masking off. Oh, we're nearly there. That's just a little bit. Yeah, good. Last few frames now. And I don't think he's going to move up or down that much in these last few frames. We can just chase him off. Good. Off you go, buddy. There you go. Hello. And I'd say one more frame to go. Don't get lazy. And he's pretty much that last little bit there, and then he's out. Okay, so it doesn't really matter what the shape of the mask is at the end, just that it's all the way out. So we've now masked everything. If I grab this and bring it in, you know, obviously he's not there anymore, but yeah, just mask that all out. I'm going to tilt it out of there, and that is now all keyframed. As you can see, all our keyframes for that mask are all the way along there. So what do we do now? Well, we go back to Selection Tool, and we bring the corn. Let's move this up onto the second track. Could have sworn I did that before. And move the corn. Not there. It's in shot there. Oh, let's get to fit. I thought there was more in that clip. We don't want it there. What we want it is right at the beginning of this keyframe. So when this is sized down a little bit, you can't quite click on everything at the same time. Let's go right to the end. In fact, let's just use this and then go to the next. And that's where he started. Remember, not the front that he started, but the back. And we're going to bring this clip and put it right underneath. And that is it. Done. You want to see it? So there's your fake. And there he goes. Now, as you saw, there's possibly a little bit of, there's a little bit where it's slightly off. And this is where it will really highlight where it is. Actually, that works. It's just the fact that it was so angular. So what we can do is we can go into here, and just to show you what's actually happening, if I click the path so it's highlighted and we go to feather, it's set to default at 10, but we can maybe feather it a little bit more. So take it up to, let's say 40, just for nicer eyes. And if we take that back now, the line is now feathered slightly. And yeah, okay, get out of the way, you. And then that works better. As I said, it all depends on the amount of time you take, and this is a little bit off now. We can then use mask expansion if we need to. Expanding the mask to the right expands it all the way out. If you're ever so slightly off and you want to bring it in, if you go to minus, we can take it. If I just reset that and take it to minus, we can expand in or unexpand. Don't know what the option to the opposite to expand is. But if we come in a little bit to like maybe -7, play that back and see how that is. That works better. Let me just pre-render that just to give us a full representation of that. And as you can see, that renders out really quickly because it's not a massively labor intensive thing. That works well. As I said, it can be as clean or as unclean as you want it to be, but that is how to do the mask transition. And as I've already shown you, when used correctly and in the right setting, it can really just drive that story and just really push it. Love it.